Many ancient peoples, such as the Israelites, Ishmaelites, Midianites, Edomites, and others, share a common origin in Abraham, according to the Bible. Despite this family connection, they often came into conflict, especially with the Israelites. Understanding the Ishmaelites, descendants of Ishmael, the oldest son of Abraham, is crucial to understanding these historical tensions. In this video, we will explore the history of the Ishmaelites. Let's start with the origin of these people. It all begins when God made a promise to Abram, an old man living in Ur in Mesopotamia. He and his wife Sarai, who was also old and barren, had no children. The name Abram, which God later changed to Abraham, means honored father or exalted father. This is interesting because, despite the important meaning of his name, Abram still had no children. Even so, God promised Abram that he would have descendants. However, before the promise was fulfilled, Sarai, Abram's wife, decided to act on her own. She followed an ancient custom of the region that allowed a woman to have children through her servant, thus ensuring descendants for her husband. This custom is mentioned in the Code of Hammurabi. Sarai's decision to try to fulfill God's promise with her own plan ended up being rushed and brought problems from the start. Sarai decided that her servant, Hagar, an Egyptian, should have a child with Abram. However, soon after Hagar became pregnant, a rivalry arose in the house. Hagar began to treat Sarai with contempt, and Sarai, in response, humiliated Hagar. This caused Hagar to flee to the desert, even though she was pregnant. At that time, a servant chosen to bear an heir should never disrespect the legitimate wife. Therefore, Hagar's behavior was considered inappropriate. But in an act of compassion, God intervened and spoke to Hagar while she was in the desert. The Bible says that an angel of the Lord found Hagar near a water spring and told her to return to Abram's house and obey Sarai. The angel also made an important promise to Hagar about her descendants, who would be known as Ishmaelites. In the book of Genesis, chapter 16, verses 10 to 12, the angel said to Hagar, "I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count. You are pregnant and will give birth to a son, and you shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone and everyone's hand against him, and he will live in hostility toward all his brothers." Ishmael was born when Abram was 86 years old. Years later, when Abram was 99 years old, God changed his name to Abraham, which means father of many nations. The following year, at 100 years old, Abraham had Isaac. The name Abraham represents his numerous descendants, both physical and spiritual. He is considered the patriarch of several peoples through Isaac, Ishmael, and other children he had with Keturah. Additionally, the New Testament states that all who follow Abraham's faith, such as Christians, are considered his spiritual descendants. The tension in Abraham's household did not diminish over time. In fact, after the birth of Isaac, family relations worsened to the point that Sarah asked for Hagar and Ishmael to be expelled. It is important to note that Sarah did not have the right to make such a request. Just as Hagar broke social norms by despising Sarah, the legitimate wife, Sarah also disrespected these rules by demanding the expulsion of Ishmael and his mother. This request worried Abraham because he loved Ishmael very much. However, God reassured Abraham, promising to take care of the boy after they left, which indeed happened. Ishmael left Abraham's house when he was at least 16 years old. He grew up in the desert of Paran, married an Egyptian woman, and became the founder of a large group called the Ishmaelites. In the Old Testament, the term Ishmaelite was used broadly, referring not only to the direct descendants of Ishmael, but also to other nomadic groups related to Abraham who lived in the Arabian Peninsula. Some scholars compare the use of the word Ishmaelite to the modern term Arab, which includes various tribes. Sometimes the Bible uses Ishmaelites interchangeably with names like Midianites. For example, the Bible tells that when Joseph, son of Jacob, was sold by his brothers, he was taken to Egypt by a caravan of Ishmaelites and Midianites. Later, when the Midianites were defeated by the Israelites during the period of the Judges, they were also called Ishmaelites. These groups were descendants of Abraham from the children he had with his concubines, and they often united through marriage. Even Isaac's lineage was influenced by the Ishmaelites, as Esau, son of Isaac, married a woman descended from Ishmael. In the period of the Old Testament, the Ishmaelites lived in nomadic camps and traversed vast desert regions, from Havilah to Shur near the Egyptian border and toward Assyria. Like the Israelites, who were divided into 12 tribes, the Ishmaelites were also organized into 12 tribal groups: Nebaioth, Kedar, Adbeel, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Naphish, and Kedema. Several of these tribes are mentioned not only in the Bible, but also in documents from other cultures, such as the Assyrians. Governed by princes, the Ishmaelites led a free and nomadic life, exploring the desert. The Ishmaelites generally lived in tents and traveled through the desert on camels. They were known for forming large caravans, sustaining their economy mainly through trade. In chapter 37, verse 25 of the book of Genesis, the Ishmaelites are described as transporting spices from Gilead to sell in Egypt. It is believed that they had much wealth in gold. This is evident when, upon defeating the Ishmaelite Midianites, the Israelites captured many gold pendants. This treasure was a trademark of the Ishmaelites, to the point that even their camels were adorned with valuable necklaces. During the reign of David, for example, the father of one of Absalom's army commanders is identified as an Ishmaelite, highlighting the status and wealth that some of them achieved. Some scholars suggest that the man mentioned might actually have been an Israelite living in the lands of the descendants of Ishmael. Additionally, the Bible mentions the warriors of the Ishmaelite tribe of Kedar in Isaiah chapter 21, verse 17, highlighting that they were skilled archers, maintaining the tradition of Ishmael. Given these facts, the question arises, what happened to the Ishmaelites? Do they still exist today? The answer is complicated. Due to the great mixture and assimilation of cultures in the ancient East, it is difficult to trace the historical continuity of the Ishmaelites with precision. However, the Bible does not mention the extinction of the Ishmaelites. The history of these peoples is so intertwined with other cultures that scholars debate whether the descendants of Nebaioth, one of the Ishmaelite tribes, could have been the ancestors of the Nabateans, a people who flourished during the Greco-Roman period. Although many scholars find this connection unlikely, many Muslim Arabs today still consider themselves direct descendants of Ishmael, keeping the Ishmaelite identity alive. In any case, the Holy Scriptures show that the Ishmaelites would become a numerous and influential people. Although Ishmael was not the child of the promise God made to Abraham, that role was destined for Isaac. The divine interactions with Hagar in the desert while she was pregnant with Ishmael reveal a special plan for his descendants. God told Hagar that although Ishmael was not directly part of Abraham's original covenant, he and his descendants would achieve their own form of greatness. This highlights a parallel narrative of prosperity, though separate from the main lineage of Abraham. However, the trajectory of the Ishmaelites was not without challenges. Biblical history and traditions show that the Ishmaelites frequently engaged in conflicts with their neighbors, including the descendants of Isaac. These confrontations reflect tribal rivalries and territorial disputes that marked the history of the Ishmaelites over the centuries. Despite their resilience and ability to maintain a distinct culture, the Ishmaelites faced constant conflicts over resources and territories. Moreover, even with constant hostility and disputes, the Ishmaelites played an important role in the region. Their skills in desert navigation and extensive trade allowed them to maintain significant influence despite the difficulties. This duality between conflict and influence shows the complexity of the Ishmaelites. who, even though they were not part of God's promise to Abraham, found their own path to historical and cultural significance. Now, comment if you already knew who the Ishmaelites were in the Bible, leave your like, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos.